So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about what impacted me specifically between the NAFTA article, chapter 10, and a little bit of the conclusion of the Ava Chomsky's Central America's Forgotten History novel. And I'm also going to reflect on the two videos we watched, Sin Nombre, and apologize for butchering the second name, um, Mon Machiapolis. So I'm going to be talking about both of those as well. To start, let's just go right to the NAFTA article. One thing that really stood out to me was the impact, the global impact of NAFTA and the side effects that it had. So one thing that just jumps out to me right away was the negative effects it had on Mexico and other countries in Latin America. You think about the tortilla crisis or the maize crisis. These are just essential food, and the way of life just revolves around the corn. And so when you get an economy that's based on pulling resources in and then also exporting them out, in other countries looking to buy out the local farmers just by having those big shell companies essentially take over the local mills and jack up those prices so the communities surrounding can no longer afford the basic essentials of life. It shows you just the impact that it has, and it really cripples or it negatively impacts the people in that area. So that was one thing that just jumped out to me right away from the NAFTA article. And now we go to Chomsky's novel. One thing that really stood out to me was just all the organizations and the negative impacts that during each time period it had. You think back to the Obama administration and the Trump administration. Um, you have citizens that are fighting for their lives in their hometowns. They're trying to establish a living between what they want to eat, where they want to work. And you just right away, your Chomsky identifies those numbers about all the people from Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, all the people that are migrating to the United States looking for an opportunity just to support their family, all because of inadequate opportunities for them to, like I said, establish themselves and to provide for their family. You go back to these acts that were put in place from each administration. You think back to the DACA, DACA. You had that organization. You get to the ABC, American Baptist Church. They had to come out and publicly address how bad the situation was, and you just show the amount of people that are attempting to leave their impoverished area or their war-ridden areas. This also ties into our previous reading about the dirty wars, when people are trying to escape the dirty wars and the mass violence and the mass killings that were taking place behind closed doors just so they can essentially get turned away at the border. It's a pretty sad process to really read about and to comprehend, considering like all the opportunities that we are fortunate to have here. Um, it was a really powerful closing statement from Chomsky where it really talks about the best way forward is to reflect on our actions and to not only be apologetic for our actions, but it is our responsibility to make up for our lost efforts and to put our best foot forward and to help everyone when we can. In today's day and age, I don't think we do that enough. You look at all they say illegal immigrants, but when you think about who the illegal immigrants are, it's people who, like I said when it ties into the NAFTA article, or the people that we've heard about in Chomsky's novel, they're trying to escape a really bad situation. And just as we've seen, a majority of you have kids that are being left at the border, or you have one family member that's that's into the United States, while their kids are back home. So you get those deferred payments. You have the people that are making a profit in the United States and are sending it back to their families just because of how desperate they are, and there's a greater opportunity to provide for their family in the United States. So that was very powerful, and that really stood out to me. And then another section that really caught my attention was just how the cruel there was. It talked about the torture, it talked about killing, it talked about leaving kids just out like in these detainment facilities, and it's really horrible just to really take in what's happening. And the United States is almost turning a blind eye. It's not giving our best effort to help as many people as we can, and it's really hard and sad to see that. Um, so now we are going to reflect on Sinobre. Just briefly, you can get really into it. There's the gangs, and you have the whole story plot line. But what really stood out to me was the various ways that the people were trying to get into the United States. You have the trains, you have the busing. There's just so many people that are trying to escape these rough situations, and again are looking out to provide for themselves and to really enlist into a better opportunity. Um, and then that might be a brief summary, but I really wanted to get into this next video. Again, I might butcher the name, but Machiapolis. So this by far was one of the most influential pieces that impacted me so far, I would say, in this course. You hear about these women that are living in these unfair situations. The Sonys, like they're the places they're going to, it's like there's toxic chemicals being released into the air. We saw when they walked close to the facility, they got it on their clothes. There was water contamination right near their villages. They talked about getting sores on their arms, their legs, and they talked about even how their children are like starting to cough and really being affected by it. Excuse me. And it's really tough to see because how much time and effort they put into working for these companies just to be treated like we saw the companies just get up and leave because there's cheaper labor somewhere else. You don't realize how much people you're affecting and the situation that you're leaving behind with all this pollution. Even the metals company that really fought to say, yeah, we left, we cleaned it up, everything's all perfectly fine, but you see in the video like there's contaminated metal everywhere that's really affecting the community and the population that's inside that community. It's really sad to see. And then you also saw in the video there were two women specifically that had to fight for their rights just for severance pay. When the company did decide, okay, we're going to get up and leave, they violated that simple right of giving severance pay. And even when they went to a court system, which the company never thought would ever happen, the company sent a lawyer that even tried negotiating the price down of what their severance was to pay them. And it's really hard to see like a big company like that just try and take the easy way out and not fulfill what is required by them of law. So it was kind of like a happier ending, so to speak, in the end when we saw them actually get the proper steps in order to remove all the hazardous material that was left. And we also saw that it was really up to these women who are the leaders of this area, who are looking out not only for themselves, the community, and their families, but they're looking to spread awareness of the situation of what's going on around them. By far the most impactful scene in that video, though, was the different colored shirts that the workers were wearing. And then they held up each shirt and they talked about what they did. And really, it's really hard to see just beyond just with a shirt hanging up of the company really just thinks of you as, like Adam Smith used to say in philosophy, as hands. Like those hands are expendable, and as we see that some companies just up and leave for that cheaper labor, but you can always find more hands because people are always trying to provide for their family, even with the hazardous and toxic work environment. But that's their only way of providing for their families. So they're accepting these health risks just in order to try and overcome the situation and to help their children and their future. So I know it was kind of a really both sad videos, and it was really a tough, I'd say, assignment this week. Just hearing about all these sad stories between the migration or the immigration and migration, and just how each story was affected between like the negative outcomes and the refusal to accept what happened and to put our best step forward and to accept what happened, but also at the same time try and make up for what did happen. It was a lot of words there, but in the end, we really need to come together as one and work on resolving these issues for the future and to be sympathetic for all these people that are in need of help. Um, Overall, I thought this week was really, it was a good read, and I learned a lot of information. And yeah, thank you for listening.